Good morning, everyone. At least this morning here in Finland. This is Michael Robbins, substituting for my wife, Tuija Robbins. We're broadcasting here from the Temple of Silence in Luoma, Finland. And today our work is with the triangles. Now, I just want to say that we have an important event coming up tomorrow, where we're going to have at 6:30 a.m. GMT a webinar on some of the fundamentals of the triangles, a very interesting diagram from esoteric astrology which we can discuss, and also some of the important triangles. Their name is Legion. We have to think about the cosmic triangles, the zodiacal triangles, the systemic triangles, the planetary triangles, and the triangles that are found within humanity and within the individual human being. And there's so much to discuss about that, because we have to transform the etheric network of our planet over time from a pattern of squares into a pattern of triangles. Well, Master DK has said that this particular project, the triangles, is close to his heart. I guess that's an occult hint for those who can follow what he means. I think it's a very Mercurian kind of thing. He's, in a way, he represents the planet Mercury, just the way the Master Kutumi represents the planet Venus in a certain respect. And Mercury has a deeply esoteric third ray component. The minute you're talking about the third ray, you're talking about triangles. And the three Buddhas of activity are coming forth principally on the third ray, even though there is a particular ray, either 1, 2, or 3, representing each one of them, or which each one of them does represent. So this is a Mercury day. This is a Wednesday. We always broadcast on the triangles on Wednesday, and we have to realize that the triangles have to be emphasized in a daily manner with the triangle or triangles that we have formed with others, and how important this particular task may be. I'd like to read just a little bit. The interesting thing is that Master DK did not say so much about the actual method of building triangles. He simply said how important it was and gave us a few of the fundamentals. He did say actually a great deal about many of the particular triangles, ranging all the way down to the cosmic triangles and down to the microcosmic triangles within the human being itself. So here's a bit from Master DK, and let us attend carefully. He says, disciples need to be aware of the true proposed plan and find ways to make clear the middle position between the difficulties brought forward and the simplicities which distort. Some people think it's the simplest thing in the world and get caught up in the organizational aspect, and others make it so complicated and so esoterically inaccessible that one wonders whether one can do the work. So there's a midway point here. He wants to clarify somewhat the minds responsible for the initial steps of this deeply esoteric enterprise. And of course, by now, we should be beyond that issue of just beginning the deeply esoteric enterprise. There have been groups all over the world, of course, with the Lucis Trust starting everything, and then other esoteric groups which have promoted the triangles. He tells us it's different to the intellectual and practical work which men and women of goodwill are asked to do and will do. It is not what some earnest people regard as goodwill work or a phase of the goodwill work. The forming of triangles of light and goodwill, and later triangles of will to good, later. The forming of triangles of light and goodwill concerns the reservoir of energy upon the inner and etheric side of life, which will automatically and with full circulatory effect enable the exoteric work of the men and women of goodwill to make progress. So think about how responsible that is. You know, we might say, well, we can enjoin people to enter the goodwill work and so forth, but this is an irresistible force of love and light on the inner side, which automatically inclines people to carry out the projects of goodwill. It is not goodwill per se, he says, but the creation of triangles of energy within the etheric body of the planet, which are deliberately qualified by goodwill. So goodwill, which is love in action, it circulates everywhere. The two phases of the work are necessarily complementary to each other, but must not be regarded as one, as the same thing. So that the triangles of light, the triangles of light must be qualified by or become the agents of goodwill. And the two groups are closely interrelated. And then he tells us something about how the men and women of goodwill, unless they're advanced enough, don't really need to know about the esoteric underpinnings of this. But their work along the lines of goodwill will be successful or non-successful, and he's speaking in the long-range point of view, according to the intensity of purpose and the depth of love demonstrated by the two groups of triangles members. So we have a very responsible task here. Our task is to help the men and women of goodwill who are seeking to bring about changes in this very troubled world, to strengthen them by this inner access of energy. Can we do that? Can we do that? Of course we can do that. It's a question of whether we will do that. And it is simple in a certain respect. You meet on the inner plane in your mind's eye with the member of your triangle or triangles, and you circulate love and goodwill, and you circulate light, and you see everybody as a soul-infused personality related to the great triangles network, and you hold that attitude and you sound the great invocation. It doesn't take a long time every day, but it has to be a daily impulse, or whenever you may feel like it. You may be inclined at a certain point of the day to connect with your triangle or triangles. It doesn't have to be exactly at the same time. I think that's giving too much attention to the outer circumstances. It's more when the Spirit strikes you, and just as long as it strikes you every day, that's good. Okay, just as long as we understand the importance of this triangle's work, and in a way, the magical number 100,000. Well, the story is that someone who worked at the Lucis headquarters was told by Alice Bailey that if the number 100,000 triangles could be reached, we could really turn the distressing human situation around. After we finish our meditation, I will give you a sign-in number for the webinar, which starts tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. GMT. And I've sent you invitation. And if you, for any reason, don't have the link to the Triangles webinar or to the Pluto Vega Sirius event, which occurs tomorrow, and the broadcast for that will begin at 8:45 in the morning GMT. You just send me a note that you need those links, and I'll get them to you, or send to Brett Mitchell. My email is easy to remember, infinitize8@gmail.com. It's like infinity, but not quite. Infinitize8, the number 8, @gmail.com. Okay, friends, now we will begin. And we will compose ourselves, or compose our not-selves, will sound the Om 3 times as an increasingly soul-infused personality, one Om for each one of the vehicles, mental, emotional, and etheric physical. We visualize the network of golden triangles covering the entire planet. And we imagine that these triangles are qualified by spiritual light and goodwill. Remembering that they are effective according to the depth of feeling with which they are created and sustained, and according to the intensity of purpose. We focus on our own triangle, or in case we have more, many of us do, upon our triangles. And inwardly we call out the names of the triangle's members, one after another, and create our rapport with them. Imagining ourselves as soul-infused personalities and our fellow triangle members as expressing the soul through the personality. The soul is pouring through all of the triangles in which we are participating. We imagine this: the light and love of the soul is pouring through. Love and goodwill is passing between the members of our triangles. And as the Tibetan has said, it's so important we attempt to deeply feel that this is the fact. These fundamental triangles of spiritual light underlie the triangles of goodwill. The soul is light. Light is passing through all of the triangles in which we are participating. An illumined mini network which will be created to the greater network. And this light, of course, will illumine the consciousness, our own, and the consciousness of all who are contacted by us. The great light demonstration which is due from our planetary logos can be aided by the kind of work we are doing. So we try to feel that light, that spiritual illumination. And we sustain that circulation of light, goodwill, and fundamental love through these people with whom we are at least spiritually intimately related. And we link up our triangle or triangles with the golden network. It's just one little part of that great and growing network, indispensable at this time when so many of the actions tendencies of the lower subplanes are working out. They need to be countered. We try to realize that the network of triangles is connected to a great shambolic triangle formed by those, for us, rather incomprehensible beings who were planetary logoi in a previous Mahamanvantara, the three Buddhas of activity. Try to imagine that, and of course, Sanat Kumara, the great emanation of our planetary logos, at the center of that exalted triangle. It's the access to this deeply seated roots within Shambhala, which is so important in redeeming humanity and in safeguarding humanity. Try to tune in on that. Just imagine this network is contacting beings who were planetary logoi already in a previous solar system. That's an amazing thought. And the great being who is the emanated representative of our planetary logos, and so in a way he is our planetary logos. Every emanation is ultimately its own source. We try to realize that in this troubled world, with so much acting out of divisiveness and other lower Martian and Plutonic qualities, that in times of emergency, and we're in those times and will increasingly be in those times, in times of emergency within humanity or upon the planet, these Buddhas of activity can be evoked and can energize the Triangles Network for protective purposes. Stimulating, obviously, the light, the goodwill, the love, and the will to good in the network, and thus carrying out the purpose of Sanat Kumara to the extent we can feel it. So every day through our network, the great invocation is propagated. It is the most effective instrument for promoting our right cooperation with the process of the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. It's our major instrument. So we can do some really, really effective work here. We just have to realize that it is possible and carry it forward. And now we will focus on the great invocation as it is Sun. Visualizing your network and those energies passing through into the great network. And so we see the network of golden triangles covering the entire planet. And more of them, and more of them. Triangles of high quality, deeply felt, with the will behind it, the will to good, the spiritual will, leading eventually towards the sacredness of our planet as we learn to tame the influences of Mars, now rampant on our planet in a negative way, and accept the uplifting, redeeming influences of our higher prototype, Venus. Well, thank you, friends, for participating together. Whether you are here right now in real time or whether you receive this later, our weekly work along these lines is important, and your daily work in your own private way is very important. Now, tomorrow is an important day. It is the time of the conjunction of Pluto with Vega again. I think it's the fourth conjunction, and they both oppose Sirius. Vega and Sirius are always opposed, more or less. That's how they are in the sky. But Pluto has joined and will be conjuncting Vega, and so we must learn how to use words of power to transform human thought. There are so many negative mantrams being thrown around today, so many lying impacts which are attempting to affect human consciousness in a negative, subversive manner. We must counter that with the positive words of power so that we can magnetize human consciousness correctly. Tomorrow at 8:45 GMT, we will have the broadcast along these lines, and then when the exact moment of the Pluto-Vega conjunction occurs, we will be in deep meditation. I don't have that exactly, but it's within a little bit more than an hour after we begin. And remember, at 6:30 a.m., we actually have a webinar, and the number for that webinar is 138-007-331. That's 138-007-331. All you have to do is go to the gotowebinar.com, and it'll say join a webinar, and you just put in that number. Or you will have the link that I've sent you, or failing any of that, just write me, and I'll send you the links you need. Infinitize8@gmail.com. Infinitize and the number 8 at gmail.com. Tomorrow we'll also, goodness, it'll be a big day. We'll be working at 5 o'clock in the morning on the Reappearance of the Christ webinar. So really 3 things happening, Reappearance of the Christ broadcast. So the broadcast at 5 GMT, then at 6:30 we have the webinar, and then at 8:45, and this is all GMT, we have the broadcast on the Vega Pluto conjunction oppose Sirius. Okay, then we'll conclude our work now with the Gayatri, one of the most ancient prayers of humanity. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. And of course, what we're talking about here is the central spiritual sun.